Morning to all. Previous lecture, you have discussed some of the internal circuitry, as the sensor to the signal conditioning devices. We are using some of the another circuitry like bridge, analog to digital converter. Okay. So this part we have already discussed. Today we will discuss about the last one point of this series is that data transmission and batteries used for low power cells. Right? So first of all, we will discuss regarding data transmission. After that, we will discuss which types of battery can be used for low power sensor. We will discuss later. First of all, we will discuss the data transmission. Okay. So data transmission, data it can be transmitted from the sensors to signal conditioning devices. That means to the microcontroller. Either that signal up to signal conditioning devices in the analog form or it may be digital form. Right now, sensor output whether it is in analog form or it may be in the digital form. No need to convert. If digital format data, it can be directly transferred to the microcontroller devices or it may be computer devices. If this data it is in the analog format, then this data it can be converted by using some devices we have discussed, that is analog to digital conversion, or it may be direct digitization. Directly it can be converted into digital format. So this point or this conversion we have already discussed, that is data obtained from the sensor, it is in the two format, right? Data obtained from the signal or data it can be obtained from the two format. It is nothing but first one analog form or it may be digital. Sensorचा output का data जो मिळणार आहे, this data either in the form of analog or it may be digital form. Now, how this data it can be transferred into sensor output to the signal conditioning devices or to the microcontroller. So there are some transmission ways. Okay, कोणत्या वेळी डेटा आपण काय करतो, ट्रान्समिट करतो, whether it may be analog signal or it may be digital signal. Okay, so see that data or the current signal obtained from the sensor. If we are considering example, that is the current signal or the current sensor. So output obtained from the sensor, it is in the varies in the range of 4 to 20 million, right? So if we are considering any one of the sensor like current generating sensor whose output it is in the form of current, either it may be analog or digital, right? So this value of current generating sensor, it will be varies from 4 to 20 million, right? So this is in the form of data or signal. काय असेल म्हणजे सेन्सरचा आउटपुट 4 to 20 million पर्यंत व्हॅल्यू होत आहे. That means suppose this is one of the sensor whose output it is in the form of current signal, and its value it should be varies from 4 to 20 million, right? So suppose the value it is in between that and signal obtained from that is nothing but analog signal, right? Suppose this varies or maximum value it is nothing but 5 million. सिग्नल जो ऑब्टेन झालेला आहे सेन्सरचा आउटपुट current generating sensor if you are considering, so its value should be varies from 4 to 20 million म्हणजे आउटपुट कुठे मिळणार आहे आपल्याला 4 to 20 million. Suppose we are considering output obtained from that sensor is nothing but 5 million. Output जे आहे ते 5 million here produce झाले. Okay, so this is one type of data. Either it may be analog value or digital value. Digital मध्ये असेल तर for some time it is in the form of 1, sometimes it is in the form of 0, pulse form or it may be digital form. So this data it can be transferred, whether it is analog signal, it can be transferred to the analog to digital converter, or it may be direct digitalization process. After that it is converted into after that it is fed to the microcontroller. पर तो microcontroller ला काय करणार आहे आपण फेड करणार आहे किंवा computer devices computer to read that data or to read the signal. So see, there are main 3 ways to transfer the data or to transmit the data. According to this, how many wires can be used? So there are 3 types of wire it can be used. According to this, there are 3 types of data transmission. First one is nothing but 2 wire data transmission. How many number of wire it can be used? Is that 2 wire data transmission. Second one is that 4 wire data transmission, and third one is nothing but 6 wire data transmission. Okay, so number of wire used to transmit the data depends upon that. There are 3 types of data transmission. First one 2 wire, second one is that 4 wire data transmission, and third one is nothing but 6 wire data transmission. So these are the simple 3 types to transmit the data obtained from the sensor or the signal obtained from the sensor to the microcomputer or it may be microcontroller. Right? We are transferring that data. This is nothing but data transmission. Which way we are using to transmit the data? So we are using either 2 wire transmission, we are using either 3 wire transmission or 4 wire transmission. Why it is called as 3 wire? 4 wire transmission and 6 wire depends upon number of wire used. किती number of wire used केले त्याच्यावरती काय आहे depends. Okay, so this is related to data transmission. We will see one by one. Okay, see, depending upon direction, there are 3 types of data transmission. First one is nothing but 2 wire method or 2 wire data transmission. Second one is nothing but 4 wire data transmission, and third one is nothing but 6 wire data transmission. So the most of cases digital format essentially requires use an analog to digital converter. If the data obtained from the sensor it is in the form of analog, we require analog to digital converter to convert it into digital format, because our computer or it will be microcontroller, it will read the only digital data. So we want to convert that data, and transmission it is also digital format, it is also advantageous, and the most important of which is noise immunity. Okay, so transmission in the digital format has several advantages. If data it can be transferred into digital, it is having an advantages as compared to the analog. Okay, but in digital also somewhat there is a loss of information. So loss of information is also there. So in many of the cases, digital transmission cannot be done for some reason. Then the sensor output signal is transmitted to the receiving side in the analog form. Okay. Some of the cases of some of the sensor, the transmission of data in the digital format, it is not acceptable in some reason. Due to some of the reason, it is not acceptable. At that situation, the data it can be transferred into analog form. Analog form मध्ये data काय करतो आपण transmit. Now see, we will see one by one. What is meant by 2 wire transmission? Okay, so this 2 wire transmission, it is the one of the way to transmit the data from sensor output to the microcontroller, or it may be some of the signal conditioning devices or interfacing devices. So two wire analog transmitter which are used to couple sensor to the control and monitoring device in the process industry, where it can be used, that is two wire transmission. It can be used to couple the sensor, that means to sensor output, and control and monitoring devices. So which is the control and monitoring devices? Okay, control and monitoring devices. ब्लॉक डायग्राम लक्षात आली असेल पहिली, तर त्याच्यावर लगेच लक्षात घ्या. कशावरून कंट्रोल करतो आपण, मॉनिटरिंग कशावरून करतो? सेंसर काय केले होते आपण? इट इज number of sensor, it can be connected to multiplexer. Multiplexer gives at a time one output, it can be fed to the top analog to digital converter. If it is necessary to convert into digital or data obtained from the sensor, it is in direct digital. So direct digital, it is connected to the microcomputer, or some analog to digital converter, it can be interface in between multiplexer and microcontroller or computer. बरोबर? After that, computer काय करतं? It will processes or monitor that data. बरोबर ना? It will monitor that data, gives command or to the peripheral signal or actuator to control that situation. बरोबर? कार्डवर मॉनिटरिंग सिस्टम मध्ये होतं. काय करेल तो? कॉम्प्युटर रीड करेल एखादा डोर ओपन आहे. If that door it is open, then it will show the message to the peripheral devices. Peripheral devices मध्ये message show करेल की number of that means number 2 door is open or number 3 door is open. Okay. At the same time, it will give command to that of actuator. Actuator ला command करेल. So in car door monitoring system, this driver it will be act as an actuator, right? So it will give the command to that of actuator and close that door, right? No, that means it is controlling action. And who will monitor? That microcomputer, it will process or monitor that situation or condition. So that means two wire analog transmitter, it is coupled, where it is coupled, sensor to the control and monitoring devices. म्हणजे सेन्सर आणि मॉनिटरिंग डिव्हाइसेस आणि कंट्रोल डिव्हाइसेस साठी याच्यामध्ये काय केलंय? कपल केलं. सो दॅट मीन्स सेन्सरचा जे काय डेटा आहे, जो डेटा सेन्सरचा असेल, तो आपल्याला काय करायचं आहे? मायक्रो कॉम्प्युटर पर्यंत द्यायचा आहे किंवा मायक्रो कंट्रोलर पर्यंत द्यायचा आहे. सो दिस डेटा इट कॅन बी ट्रान्सफर्ड from sensor to the microcontroller by using two wire transmission in the process industry. In the process industry, that means in the paper industry, or it is in the any process industry, that means vehicle manufacturing industry, car manufacturing industry, that means it is one type of process industry. बरोबर ना? Rolling mill असेल. So that means for their two wire analog transmitter, it can be used. Two wire analog transmitter, it can be used to couple that sensor whose output it is in the form of analog transmitter, whose output it is in the form of analog. It can be transferred to that of controlling or monitoring equipment in the food processing industry. Right? Now its figure we will see how it is, why it is called as two wire transmission. See, so the current obtained from that type of sensor, म्हणजे सेन्सरचा डेटा आपण म्हणतो, डेटा इट इज इन द फॉर्म ऑफ एनालॉग फॉर्मॅट मध्ये म्हणतोय. सो सेन्सर आउटपुट इट इज इन द फॉर्म ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिक. बरोबर? कशाच्या फॉर्म मध्ये असतं? सेन्सरच्या डेफिनेशन मध्येच आहे, इट विल कन्वर्ट नॉन इलेक्ट्रिक सिग्नल इनटू इलेक्ट्रिक सिग्नल. आणि कोणत्या याच्यामध्ये किंवा कोणत्या टाइप मध्ये डेटा मिळतो किंवा आउटपुट येतं, त्याचे पण 5 टाइप्स. एक तर करंटच्या फॉर्मॅट मध्ये असेल, व्होल्टेजच्या फॉर्मॅट मध्ये असेल. ओके. So that means it is in the form of electric current, and this data obtained from the sensor it will be varies from range. If there is a current sensor, it will varies from 4 to 20 milliampere, which represent the entire span of input signal. Okay, so which काय range असेल? output obtained from the sensor, it will be varies from 4 to 20 milliampere. Okay, that means that sensor it will be sends a span of 4 to 20 milliampere stimulus. बरोबर, म्हणजे तेवढा स्पॅन त्यानं सेन्स केला की त्याचा आउटपुट काय असेल 4 to 20 मिलीएम्पियर मध्ये असेल, राइट. 4 to 20 milliampere. So the minimum stimulus correspond to the 4 milliampere while the maximum to the 20 ampere. Okay, so minimum value obtained from that sensor, minimum value obtained from that sensor, it is in the form of 4 milliampere, and maximum value obtained from the sensor, it is 20 milliampere. And data or signal obtained from that in between that 4 milliampere to 20 milliampere, this data it can be transmitted, right. So below that that is 4 ampere cha below the current generate zala, sensor does not work or it does not provide some data signal. Above that means their limit crosses, again sensor it is inoperable. बरोबर ना, प्रश्न येते का? रेंज दिलेला आहे, within that range, so that means minimum value 4 milliampere and the maximum value of 20 milliampere. So two wire, it will be formed as a loop of serially connected two wire transmitter, conductor, power supply and the load resistor RL. The transmitter may be voltage to current converter. जो काय ट्रान्समीटर आपण बघितलं, that means analog to digital converter मध्ये voltage to current converter, then frequency voltage or charge to frequency converter, right, or it may be current charge to the frequency converter or it may be pulse converter. Okay, and last one successive approximation converter, correct. Okay, successive approximation converter we have discussed. So these are serially connected two wire. In that two wire transmitter, conductor is there, that means wire is nothing but one type of conductor, two wire transmitter conductor. There is a power supply is there and the load resistance is there. So we will see the connection. The load resistance R load develops output voltage representing the stimulus. Okay, so this R load, if the current flowing from any one of the resistor, across that resistor there is a voltage drop. बरोबर ना? कधी voltage drop present होईल तर current flow झाला ना, right. So if the current flowing from 4 to 20 milliampere in load resistance RL or it may be R load resistance, at that situation there is a voltage drop, it will be present across that resistor. Loads across voltage drop present with, that means it is the due to R load resistance or resistive type of sensor, it will be converted into current generating sensor जो आहे त्याचे कन्वर्जन कशामध्ये होते, voltage मध्ये. So that means it is the current to voltage converter. It is current to voltage converter due to R. When the sensor signal varies, the transmitter output current varies accordingly, and so the voltage across load. Okay, so signal obtained from the sensor, if it is varies, or input stimuli if it is varies, then current generated by that sensor it will be varies. Current generated by that sensor it will also varies, and if the current generated by that sensor it will be varies, then voltage obtained across that load resistance it will also varies. Right. सेंसर में स्टिमुलस सेंस केलं की या रेंज मधल्या करंटची व्हॅल्यू चेंज होईल. इफ दिस व्हॅल्यू ऑफ करंट इट विल बी चेंज, म्हणजे इनिशियली 5 एंपियर आहे, सपोज समवन 6 एंपियर आहे, व्हॅल्यू चेंज झाली. हा करंट चेंज झाला की लोड रेजिस्टन्स मधून फ्लो होणारा करंट पण काय होईल, तोच करंट असेल, म्हणजे तो चेंज झाला. इफ द करंट फ्लोइंग फ्रॉम लोड रेजिस्टन्स इट विल बी चेंजेस accordingly the voltage across that load resistance will also changes. I into R. Okay, so this voltage will also changes. So see diagram for two wire transmission. Okay, so this diagram shows that the two wire transmitter, wire transmission. In that, this is the sensor. Sensor, it will sense the stimulus. It will sense the stimulus, and its output it is in the form of कशाच्या फॉर्म मध्ये कशाच्या फॉर्म मध्ये आउटपुट येईल त्या सेन्सरवर स्टिम्युलस सेन्स केलं त्याचा आउटपुट कोणत्या फॉर्म मध्ये electric current, right? So here symbol for current generator, that means it will generate some of the current. That means it is a variable current, change in current. So at that situation, why it is called as two wire transmitter? This is one of the wire, this is one of the wire. That means conductor, it will form one loop. It will form one of the loop. And here it is one load resistance, it can be connected. Across that load resistance, we obtain the potential difference or voltage. By the sensor, it will be sensed some stimulus. When it will be sensed some stimulus, at that situation, there is a generation of current in the output side. That means it will convert power to electric. Sensor, there is a conversion in the electrical current. So this here current it will be generated. This current it will be travel in this closed loop. The closed loop मध्ये काय होईल? Current travel will pass will here it is range it can be given. So current flowing through that loop it is varies from 4 to 20 million. त्याच्यामधून फ्लो होणारा करंट काय असेल 4 to 20 amp, right? 4 to 20 ampere current it will be flowing. If the stimulus changes, current generator generate the current, it will also changes. If this current changes, the potential drop across this resistance or load resistance it will be changed, right? त्याच्या अक्रॉस potential difference पण काय will change. And here to generate the current by sensing the sensor some stimulus, at that situation we require some of the power supply. To enable the operation of this resistor we require power supply. So this is one form of closed loop by using two wire circuit or two wire transmitter, and data it will be transmitted by using two wire circuit. Data it can be transmitted by using two wire transmission. In that this part as a part असेल it is nothing but it is the sensor side, and this part it is nothing but controls. This part it is nothing but controls. See here, this sensor sends some stimulus. Sensor में काहीतरी stimulus sense केलं. This is the sensor side. At that situation, this transmitter it will generate some of the current. The transmitter काय करेल? Current generate. This current it will be flowing from this loop, and to enable the operation of this sensor, this resistor, load resistor, one of the power supply it is required. So power supply 40 volt it can be required, and then across that, due to this current generator across the load resistor, there is voltage it can be obtained. That means there is a current to voltage converter. This is called as current to voltage converter, and there are two wire it can be used. That means there is a two wire transmission of data. Data transmission in the form of two wire transmission line. There is given two wire transmission line. Why it is called as two wire? All of you getting? Because there are two wires are used, and due to that two wire it will form one closure. Right? So it is called as two wire transmission. The same current that carries the information about the stimulus may also be used by the transmitter side to harvest its operating power. So these are some explanation it can be given. So the lowest sensor signal produce minimum sensor signal for lowest value HT asset because range it can be defined. So that lowest value is nothing but 4 milliampere, and maximum value it is nothing but 20 milliampere, and minimum value is nothing but 4 milliampere. That means at 4 milliampere, not less than 4 milliampere, at 4 milliampere, this enables the operation of this transmitter. That means it will generate the current. It will enable. So see 4 milliampere current that often is sufficient to powering the transmission side, which is sufficient to power this transmitter side or to generate this current. Okay. So the same two wire loop it is used for both the information transmission and delivering power to the sensor and transmitter. Which is a two-wire system. This two-wire system it is used for information transmit also. That means sensor catch केली जी काही information असेल किंवा signal असेल, it will also transmit it as well as it will also deliver the power to the sensor and transmitter. Sensor वाले transmitter का power को काय करते deliver. So this is the two-wire transmitter from transmit data from sensor to the monitoring and controlling devices by using two-wire transmission. Okay, two-wire transmission. Why it is called as two-wire? Figure is in front of you. So there are two wires, so that we can call it as a two-wire, and it will form one loop, that is one closed loop. So, getting? This is the two-wire transmitter. Okay, so data it can be transferred by using two-wire transmission. Okay. Next one type of data transmission is that four-wire transmission. Right? There is a four-wire. Why it is called as four-wire? Because there are four wires. Right? That means data obtained from sensor. Data obtained from the sensor. Data obtained from the sensor. It can be transmitted to the microcontroller, or it may be monitoring and controlling devices by using four wire. By using the four wire. So see what is the difference in that? Each and every wire there is a one resistance it can be connected. Right? No. प्रत्येक वायर में resistance connect मिलेगा. So R resistance can be connected in this wire. R resistance can be connected in this wire. R resistance can be connected in this wire, and R resistance can be connected in this wire. That means in each wire there is a resistance R it can be connected. So this is the why it is called as four wire, because there are four wire, but in each wire there is a resistance R it can be connected. Some of the resistance it can be needed. So this method it is used to measure the resistance of a remote sensor without accounting for the connecting conductor. What is the meaning? See, this method, that is four-wire data transmission method, it is used to measure the resistance. It is used to measure the resistance by remote sensor without accounting for the connecting conductor. Okay, this is that four-wire system. This four-wire system it is used to measure the value of resistance. Resistance value measure करण्यासाठी for remote sensor. Remote sensor means remotely located sensor means what is meant by remote location? What do you mean by remote location? A remote location. We are calling, we are controlling that by remote location. टीवी साठी रिमोट यूज करतो, काय असतं फक्त त्याचं कोणते कोणते फंक्शन कंट्रोल करतात. त्यासाठी रिमोट म्हणजे एका सिंगल पॉइंट वरून किंवा एका सिंगल डिव्हाइस वरून आपण काय करतो, मल्टिपल परफॉर्मन्स और मल्टिपल फॅक्टर आपण काय करू शकतो, कंट्रोल करू शकतो. सो रिमोट लोकेशन म्हणजे सपोज एखादी इंडस्ट्री कंट्रोल करता रिमोट लोकेशन वरून, म्हणजे एका स्काडा बेस सिस्टम वरून किंवा पीएलसी सिस्टम वरून होल सिस्टम आपण काय करतो, कंट्रोल करतो. इट इज कॉल्ड एज रिमोट लोकेशन. स्मार्ट ग्रिड कन्सिडर केली तर स्मार्ट ग्रिड मध्ये एका रिमोट लोकेशन वरून म्हणजे मुंबई वरून ऑल एरियाचा आपण सप्लाय कंट्रोल करतो. इट इज कॉल्ड एज रिमोट लोकेशन. राइट? Remote meaning of remote that means we are controlling all the equipment or it may be all the function by sitting at one place or one device. It is nothing but remote. So see, remote location or remote sensor, that means there are multiple function and we are controlling that multiple function by sitting on one remote location or remote sensor. एका remote control sensor वरून आपण काय करतोय, सेन्स करतोय किंवा कंट्रोल करतोय. So what it can be controlled, this method allows to measuring the resistance of remote sensor without accounting the connecting conductor. किती कंडक्टर कनेक्ट केले त्याच्यावरती डिपेंड न राहता एका रिमोट लोकेशन वरून किंवा एका रिमोट सेन्सर वरून आपण मल्टिपल ऑपरेशन मल्टिपल रेजिस्टन्स काय करतो, मेजर करतो. ओके, सो दैट मीन्स सपोज वी आर यूजिंग एनी वन ऑफ द सेंसर फॉर different application or for different use in the remote location at that situation without accounting how many number of sensor it can be connected or how many conductor it can be connected, we are able to control or we are able to measure the resistance of each resistance काय करतो आपण measure करतो. So why it is called as four wire transmission? Again, a sensor is connected to interface circuit through four wire. Interface circuit ला म्हणजे interface circuit बघितलं, एक तर analog to digital converter असेल किंवा some bridge circuit असेल or directly it is connected to the microcontroller असेल. The data obtained from that is nothing but digital format, right? So it can be interface that this four wire transmission, it can be connected to interface the circuit through four wire. Four wire चा यूज करून काय करतोय, सेन्सर आणि त्या इंटरफेस सर्किट आपण काय करतोय, कनेक्ट करतो. So like that, here it is one of the current generating sensor or current source is there. One of the V meter, it can be connected. V meter means voltage meter na, to measure that voltage and how the loop it can be formed. Loop कसे form झाले बघा, current generating sensor, each and every there is one resistor, it can be connected. Now two pair of wire forms a two loop. आता या चार वायर मधलं दोन वायर it will forms a one loop. दोन वायरचे एक लूप होईल बघा. This is one of the loop. This wire and this wire it will make one loop. Loop होते. And this wire and this wire it will make one loop. बरोबर. So this wire and this one it makes one of the loop and these two wire it will make one of the loop. That means by considering two wire it will make one closed loop or one closed loop. So in that one is called as current loop and another one is that the voltage loop. Okay, one is nothing but a current loop and another one is nothing but voltage loop. So see, this outside loop it is nothing but current loop and this internal side loop is nothing but voltage. There it is voltmeter, it can be connected, it will read the value of voltage from this resistor. There it is Vx, here it is Vx, data as a voltage here read करे और यहाँ current source, some current will be shown, here it is I0 it can be showing, here it is also I0 it can be. That means बघा four wire, in that four wire two wire makes one loop, दोन wire से एक loop होते हैं. In that one loop it is called as current loop, another one loop it is called as voltage loop. एका loop का current loop म्हणतात, एका loop का voltage loop. Okay, so the excitation loop include two wires that are connected to the current source generating excitation current I0. Okay, so excitation wire, that means here we are providing some excitation provide करतो म्हणजे एकतर voltage source use करतो किंवा current generating source use करतो, right? So that means here this current generating source can be used. This current generating source it will generate some of the current and that current is nothing but shown by I0. That means it will excitation current it will be generated by that current generating source is nothing but I0. Current generating current काय असेल I0 असेल. The voltage loop wire are attached to a voltmeter or it may be amplified. त्याच्याकडे दोन वायर आहेत, this will forms a voltage loop, right? And this wire it is attached to the either voltmeter or amplifier. Either amplifier ला connected केलेले असतील or it may be voltmeter ला connect केलेले असतील. Okay, so the constant current source, that means this current generator it will produce a constant current. This constant current generator has a very high output resistance, and therefore current I0 in the current loop is independent of the sensor Rx. Where it is Rx? This is the sensor Rx. This is one of the resistor sensor Rx, and this outer loop or current generating sensor having a high resistance or high internal resistance. Due to that high internal resistance, current flowing from that loop it is nothing but no. Current generating sensor that's a high internal impedance high असं म्हणतोय आपण. So if high internal impedance, that means current it is less, but current it is low, and in the current loop it is independent of the sensor resistance Rx. आणि तो जो काय current असेल, this current it is independent of the resistance of Rx. Rx resistance ला काय असेल, independent असेल. Okay, so and any resistance R of the wire loop, plus effect of wire is electric. Okay, so this current generator data, its internal resistance or internal impedance is high. Due to that internal resistance is high, it will generate the current having a low quantity, or it may be low current it will be generated, and this generated current it is not dependent on the Rx resistance, also the resistance connected in the wire. It is independent of the sensor resistance Rx and any resistance R of the wire. Wire loop मध्ये कोणत्याही रेजिस्टन्स वरती डिपेंड नाहीये किंवा Rx रेजिस्टन्स वरती डिपेंड नाही. ओके, Rx रेजिस्टन्स वरती डिपेंड नाही. So this is the current loop. In that current loop there is a current generating sensor is there. In that current generating sensor is there. So another thing is that now this is current generating sensor and their high internal impedance or resistance. It will generate current in the low quantity, or current generated by that current generator sensor it is low, and that generated current I or I0 it is independent of the sensor resistance and any one of the resistance connected in series with that wire. बरोबर, हे झालं ना, दोन्ही रेजिस्टन्स कनेक्ट केलेल्या रेजिस्टन्स वरती किंवा सेन्सरच्या रेजिस्टन्स वरती इंडिपेंडेंट असेल. Okay, now similar to the voltmeter or voltmeter which are connected to the voltage loop, or we can call it as an amplifier also. Let me see if amplifier connected, the amplifier will be. आपण इथे voltmeter दाखवले आहे, so that means voltmeter it can be connected to that of voltage. So that voltmeter having a high internal impedance. So see the input impedance of the voltmeter or amplifier is very high in a comparison with the resistance in the voltage loop. Hence no current is diverted from the current loop to the voltmeter. Okay. Connection कसं आहे बघा. This will forms this wire and this wire, it will forms a one loop. Suppose we are considering क्या point पासून consider केला, it will forms one loop. It will forms one loop. बरोबर, एक loop close loop form झालेला आहे. हा current generating sensor आहे, त्याला पंप म्हणतोय आपण, current generator or current source. It will generate current. Its internal impedance it is high. Its internal impedance is high, so no current will be generated. And this generated value of current, that is I0, it is independent of this resistance R resistance वर independent असेल किंवा Rx resistance वर independent असेल. ओके, Rx च्या resistance वरती किंवा R च्या resistance वर डिपेंड नाही. याचा अर्थ असा की हा रेजिस्टन्स इन्क्रीज झाला तर आपण म्हणणार करंट रिड्यूस व्हायला पाहिजे, किंवा हा रेजिस्टन्स इन्क्रीज झाला तर करंट रिड्यूस व्हायला पाहिजे. इट इज इंडिपेंडंट ऑफ दॅट. दॅट मीन्स हा जनरेटरला जेवढा जनरेट केला करंट आहे तेवढाच याच्यामधून फ्लो. इट इज इंडिपेंडंट ऑफ दॅट resistance. Okay, so it is in case of this outer loop or current. While in case of voltmeter or voltage loop, this voltmeter impedance, input impedance of that voltmeter it is very high. Okay, input impedance of that voltmeter it is very high. Due to that, no current हा जो काय जनरेट होणारा करंट आहे, no current it will be passing from that voltage. तो current voltage loop मध्ये pass होतो. Right? So this is sentence. So that I am taking figure back. So this current it is not passing very high in the comparison with the resistor in the voltage loop. Hence, no current is diverted from the current loop to the voltmeter. The current loop मध्ये जनरेट होणारा करंट जो आहे तो voltage loop कडे डायव्हर्ट होणार आहे. Ready? Because of voltmeter चा maximum impedance आहे. Maximum impedance आहे म्हणजे त्याच्याकडे करंट जास्त येईल का? नाही. So that means current it will be not diverted to the voltage loop from the current loop to the voltmeter. Therefore, wire resistance R that are in the voltage loop also can be ignored. म्हणजे voltage loop मध्ये जे काय resistance यूज केले R small r it is also ignored because voltmeter or the amplifier having a maximum internal impedance. व्होल्टमीटरचा इम्पीडन्स मॅक्सिमम असेल आणि R जो काय आपण कनेक्ट करणार आहे इट इज व्हेरी लेस दॅन सपोज R इज व्हेरी लेस दॅन इंटरनल impedance of voltmeter, so it is neglected. R is very less than internal impedance, that means it is neglected. So this R is also neglected. R is the voltage loop is also ignored, right? त्याच्यामधला रेजिस्टर जो आहे तो पण इग्नोर केला आहे. सो व्होल्टेज ड्रॉप अक्रॉस द सेन्सर रेजिस्टर Rx. ओके, सो जो काय Rx रेजिस्टरच्या अक्रॉसचा व्होल्टेज ड्रॉप असेल, Rx रेजिस्टन्स या साइडचा होता, सो त्याच्या अक्रॉसचा व्होल्टेज ड्रॉप सपोज वी आर रिप्रेझेंटिंग Vx, रेजिस्टन्स Rx and current flowing from that, त्याच्यामधून फ्लो होणार. जर व्होल्टेज लूप मध्ये करंट फ्लो होत नसेल, I0 करंट कुठे फ्लो होईल? I0 करंट जनरेटर जनरेट केला करंट आहे बरोबर, तो व्होल्टेज लूप मध्ये फ्लो होत नाही, कुठे फ्लो होईल मग? कुठे फ्लो होईल? इकडे जाणार नाही, म्हणजे हा जो काय असेल करंट तो इकडे फ्लो होईल. दॅट मीन्स इट विल बी फ्लोइंग थ्रू द Rx रेजिस्टर. सो द व्होल्टेज ड्रॉप अक्रॉस दिस Rx रेजिस्टर इट इज इक्वल्स टू Rx into current flowing from that. Zero current flow होतोय or neglected current flow होतोय, so that total current I0 generated by the current sensor it can be flowing through the Rx resistor. So the voltage across that Rx resistor is equals to Vx equals to Rx into I0. बरोबर? Rx into I0. And this I0 it is not dependent upon R resistance, R वरती पण डिपेंड नाहीये, as well as Rx वरती पण डिपेंड नाहीये. जेवढा काही करंट सेन्सरला जनरेट केलेला करंट आहे तेवढाच फ्लो, बरोबर. आणि व्होल्टेज सोर्सचा किंवा व्होल्टमीटरचा इट इज आल्सो हॅविंग अन इंटरनल इम्पीडन्स हाय as compared to internal impedance of voltmeter. This resistance it is neglected, this resistance it can be neglected. So this current it will be not flowing through the this voltage loop मध्ये पण करंट फ्लो होणार नाही. So the voltage obtained across Rx resistor it is equals to Rx into I0, and this voltage it is independent of the any resistance R which is connected in the wire. Okay, तो पण voltage जे आहे कारण करंट डिपेंडंट नाही कोणत्या रेजिस्टर वरती, मतलब the voltage is also not dependent on any resistor, right? Voltage is also not dependent on any resistance. Okay, so the 4-wire method is very powerful means of measuring the resistance of remote detectors and is used to industry and science quite extensively. So these are the two applications. So these are used 4-wire system. It can be used to measure the resistance of remote detector and it is used to industry and science quite extensive. That means it is the very powerful data transmission technique. Okay, this is very powerful data transmission technique. Lakshadala, is there any doubt? काय डाऊट आहे कोणाला डेटा ट्रान्समिशन मध्ये हा असेल तर विचारा आहे काय डाऊट कोणाला these are the data transmission last one point to be discussed in the next lecture, that is battery for low power sensor. You people already know there are some types of battery. There are main three types of battery. Again, it is divided into some types. So we'll discuss that point in the next lecture. That is last one point of this unit. ठीक है